monastery would be. Um, hmm, yeah, I'm still having these camera issues, but I'll go on. Um, One of the great things about this type of monasticism, of course, is safety in numbers, in particular for women, but also for men. Having safety in numbers was an important thing, especially if the monastery was somewhere near a trade route. And let's say you're going from Alexandria to Cyrene, you're cutting through the Nitrian desert. So, more than likely, as the caravans would go through the Nitrian desert, somebody would stop and see the monastery and sometimes give a donation, sometimes they wouldn't. But yeah, you had these monasteries that were near trade routes. So, having safety in number because you never knew who was going to be in that caravan. It could have been a friend, could have been an enemy. So that was safety in numbers. Also, having a wise abbot, having someone to confess to, somebody to share your thoughts with, somebody who could make sure that you're thinking in the right direction. Just wanted to check my camera. Okay, camera's good. So that was spiritual safety. You had physical safety, you had spiritual safety. You had a set routine. You had a set routine. Those of us who have played sports, I played high school football. I used to hate that set routine of certain exercises, but they were necessary. You know, People who are into music, having to play the scales or having to play certain songs repetitively can get on your last nerve. But these things help to build character. They help to build certain lessons. Give an example. St. John the Dwarf, Abba John the Dwarf. Anybody you'll probably hear of him if you haven't already heard of him. John the Dwarf, his Abba told him to plant a dry stick in the ground and water it. Yeah, I'm going to water a dry stick. Not just one day, but for a whole week. Not just for a whole week, but for a month. No, not just for a month, for 3 years. John the dwarf had to water a dry stick. And then during that third year, as he put some water on that dry stick, leaves came on it. It bore fruit. He picked some of the fruit to give to his Abba and said, "Look, I did what you told me to do, and look at what has come up." And thus the lesson of patience and obedience producing fruit. So, yeah, if you have a wise Abba, you have something very good. Only problem is, what if you don't have a wise Abba? And this is one of the drawbacks to Cenobitic monasticism. You might have an Abba who is abusive. You might have an Abba who is allowing all kinds of immorality to go on. You might have an Abba who's a drunkard. You might have an Abba who's anything. And there were plenty of stories where I think there was one monk from Sinai that was abused by his Abba. And in the midst, but he was always obedient. He was abused, but always obedient. Finally, he died, and his Abba asked, "Are you really dead?" And the abused monk said, "No, Abba, I'm not dead, because the obedient never truly die." And the cut that Abba's heart, and that Abba built a cell at that man's tomb, and he stayed in that cell for years in repentance until he died. Marvelous stories coming out of the Egyptian monastic traditions. The Cenobitic community, monks and nuns living together with a common rule. You had Pachomius the Great, the father of Cenobitic monasticism. It's great if you have a good Abba and you have that safety in numbers, especially for women, but you also had the risk of having a bad Abba. Now, the third type of monasticism is called skete. Skete. And this comes from the Sketis Desert, which is just outside to the west of Alexandria. Sketis translates in the Coptic language as, and I have this in the notes that I sent to you, Shehit. Shehit means place of balance. Place of balance. And that's what this form of monasticism is. It is a place of balance. It's a community of monastics, kind of like your Cenobitic monasticism, but this community does not live in close quarters. They live in their own separate huts. They live in their own separate caves. Maybe about a stone's throw away from each other, but they do live near each other. And they make their own rules of prayer. They make their own rules of spiritual living. They come together to worship at a common church, at a common chapel, but they have a sense of independence, kind of like with the hermits, kind of like with the anchorites. They have a sense of spiritual independence, but they also know that if brother so-and-so has a word, I'm going to go to brother so-and-so. If sister so-and-so can advise me on something, I'm going to go to sister so-and-so. So Cenobitic is the best of both worlds. Again, Shehit means balance, means place of balance. Macarius the Great, Piman the Shepherd. These are two prime examples of skete monasticism. That these were men who lived within an earshot of another monk, so whenever they needed advice, they can go to somebody else. In fact, if you read the Lives of the Desert Fathers or the Sayings of the Desert Fathers, you'll see where they tell stories about each other and share stories about each other. So this is the middle way. This is the middle way. Now, just as you had shared advantages, you also had some shared disadvantages. And just because you had this skete style monastery didn't always mean that you would not have to worry about thieves and bandits. For an example, Moses the Black Moses himself was a bandit at one time. And he broke into this monastery. He broke into this compound where everybody lived in the earshot of each other. Yeah. But of course, we know the story of Moses the Black, and that he was so smitten by Abba Isidore and the other monks that he too converted to Christianity and became a monk. And then at the tail end of the life of Moses, that the skeet that he belonged to would eventually be invaded by, I think there were a group of vandals that came. And Moses welcomed these vandals, and he was killed by these vandals. So, skeet monasticism did not necessarily protect people from the dangers of being in the desert, but skeet monasticism did offer freedom for monks and nuns to develop their own spiritual walk with the Lord, as with the Hermetics or the Anchorites. But also, like the Cenobitics, you had that sense of camaraderie. You had that sense of brotherhood. And you probably noticed that the lesson did continue, because I'm on a different account with the St. Athanasius Zoom meetings. So there was no interruption, thank God, and we got through the lesson well. Thanking you for your time and attention. I will try to get a recording uploaded so you can use that